Hey guys, Brendon Byrne here, and I want to answer, I think, a really important question, or at least shed some light on this question of when we have problems, knowing whether or not it is a personal problem or a relational problem. And this can cause so many issues in our relationships because you cannot fix a personal identity problem with a relationship, and you cannot fix a relational problem with personally. You cannot do that. You cannot fix someone else with yourself. And so I think this is so important because this can completely change whether or not when we're dating, when we're moving forward in relationships, when we're married, whether or not we run into conflicts that we cannot fix by using the wrong thing to try and fix it, or we know how to move forward in a positive way. So what is one of the temptations to do? Let's start off like maybe if you're single and you start dating someone and you can feel the emotional high of connection, of intimacy, of possibility, of having someone like you. And what happens? You get this emotional high, these feelings, endorphins, all this floods you. And for a moment there, you forget about all of the personal identity issues that we all have. We all have junk, we all have those types of issues. But you forget about them for a little bit. The feelings of loneliness, the feelings of maybe a little bit of depression, or the feelings of insecurity, or little habits that you don't like about yourself that you continue to do. Those type of things, we forget about it for a little bit, and we think, oh, it's the relationship, it's this person. All I've needed is a relationship to deal with these issues with me. And say you guys keep dating, say you guys maybe get married, or you just date for a while. And pretty soon that high emotional state that we have at the beginning of a relationship, that does die down. That isn't normal for that to stay at level 10, throughout the course of your entire relationship. And as the emotions die down, our ability to avoid and forget our identity issues actually disappears, and so we actually feel that stuff come back that was always there. We might have just forgotten it for a little bit under the surface. The relationship was a bit of a distraction for us, and so those identity issues start to come back. And so what happens is lots of times we can start blaming the relationship for our own personal identity issues. All of a sudden, at the beginning of the relationship, we didn't feel fear, we didn't feel insecure, we didn't feel lazy and bored and hopeless, and all these different things that were there beforehand. And in the beginning of the relationship, that wasn't there, and then it starts to come back, and we could say, oh, something's wrong with our relationship because in the beginning it wasn't there, and now it's not. Now, this is where it's so important to look at a relationship cannot fulfill identity gaps inside of ourselves. If we have some core pieces missing, if there is a level of excitement, love for ourselves, if we're dealing with things like depression and dealing with things like low self-worth, a relationship won't help us actually deal with those things. It'll help us maybe forget about them for a time. It'll help us have high emotions to where we can distract ourselves, but that's not going to actually be able to give us what we need. So in a relationship, it's so important to be able to differentiate. When I do counseling with married couples, half the time I'm helping them sort out between which problems are relational problems that they actually need to work on, things of communication, things of sharing values, sharing their hearts and listening and knowing how to work together. And then the other half are personal identity issues that they are putting on the other person, trying to make them fix or making it a relational issue when it has nothing to do with the relationship. And so a good example of a relational issue, this is me learning this in my own life with my wife. I was wanting to make something that was a personal issue and an identity issue. I was wanting to make it a relationship issue. I was going to my wife and I felt like I needed something more like words of affirmation in my life. I wanted to feel better about myself. I wanted more of this, and I don't ask for a lot. I don't think of myself as a super needy person. So when I did this time coming to my wife, I kind of had an expectation. Oh, she should give this to me. Like, she's my wife. She should be building me up. And I for some reason, I'm not feeling this right now. And so she should be giving this to me, from her. And so I had this talk with her, and I kind of realized that after talking about it with her, that I wasn't giving her freedom to choose that or not. There was an expectation. I had a specific outcome because I needed her to fulfill something in me. I needed her to be able to fix this part of me that felt like, why do I not feel lovable right now? I need to feel lovable. I need to hear words of affirmation. I need this tank of mine to be filled up. And so I wanted a specific outcome from her that was more than just a relationship thing. And we talked about it, and it was good. I was actually able to see, oh my gosh, that's not fair for me to ask something of you and not give you complete freedom to say yes or no. Now here's the tricky part. In a relationship, they should always have freedom to say yes or no. Now if my wife says, I let her in, hey, here's a way you can love me better. Here's a way that makes me feel awesome and great, through words of affirmation and whatnot. She has complete freedom to say yes or no to that. And I need to be able to still be a whole person regardless of how she responds. Say she says, forget it, I'm not going to give words of affirmation. I don't like doing that. It's too much work and effort. Yeah, that might hurt a little bit. That might actually create a little bit of a relational problem that we may have to continue to work on and grow. But I should still be okay as a person, a whole person in and of myself. I should still be fine with my identity. And so we have to be able to say, is the problem I'm bringing to the person I'm dating, my spouse, whoever, is that problem, am I asking them to fulfill an identity issue? If they say no to it, will I still be okay as a person? Will I still be able to love myself? Will I still be able to feel peace? Will I still be able to feel all these things? And so it's really important that we learn how to process what is ours and take ownership for that and not put that on the other person. Because when we're putting it on the other person, they don't have the potential to fulfill it. It's a huge weight and burden on the relationship that's just going to stifle and kill the relationship. And we're releasing ownership, so we don't even get to work on ourselves, and it's not going to get fixed. So how can you tell the difference between a relational problem and a identity problem? Well, identity problems feel like life or death. Because it's our identity, because it's so core to who we are, it feels life or death. It feels so extreme. It feels so big. And so if you are feeling like you need your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your spouse to do something for you, and it feels life or death, and if they don't, you're not going to be okay, chances are you're mixing an identity issue in with a relational problem. Now, relational problems are there too, but those things are more like you have to create boundaries. It causes hurt or pain when they're not able to give to you, or you're not able to give to them. There's consequences in the relationship, and it can be very difficult, very painful, but it shouldn't attack your identity. It shouldn't feel like you fall apart. And so if those two are being intermingled, that's a good way to kind of differentiate by looking at the severity of what you feel and the trigger of what you feel, and that helps you know kind of whether or not your issue is an identity issue or a relational issue. So I want to challenge all of you guys who are in a relationship to actually, hey Barbara, how's it going? Look at yourself and say, the issues that I'm feeling right now, the issues that I'm wanting to bring up, what is mine that I need to take ownership for? And what is a relational issue that we can start communicating and working and growing on and working on together? And I want to challenge you guys to do that. And as we learn to separate those, we actually begin to gain power to actually grow and increase and improve and move forward. So I wanted to leave you guys with that, the difference between identity issues and personal issues. And I think that is a huge thing that can make a big difference in relationships.